Hello and welcome to Matcha Mornings, part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network. I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith, and I'm excited to dive deep on topics around holistic health, the power of food, hormone health, how the practices of yoga can impact our health and well-being, and much more. So grab your cup of tea, settle in, and let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Matcha Mornings podcast. Today on the podcast, I'm really excited to be joined by Louise Holcomb from Be Moved Yoga. Louise is a yoga teacher as well as an Ayurvedic practitioner, and her work is really centered around helping people use these modalities, yoga and Ayurveda, to help heal from trauma. So she does a lot of trauma-informed yoga and uses some of the more slower forms of yoga to help us tune into ourselves, who we really are, and to help us heal. And on this episode of the podcast, Louise starts by telling us a little bit about herself, what she does, her journey with health and wellness, how these yoga and Ayurvedic practices really helped her heal from trauma, and how that's really inspired her to create her business. We also dive into a 1 year of sobriety that Louise just did over the last year through 2020 and the early parts of 2021. And we talk about what she learned from that experience. And since I just recently did 6 or 7 weeks without alcohol at the end of 2020, it was really cool to hear what her experience was like and what she learned. So there's lots of goodness in this episode. I think that you're going to love it. I can't wait for you to listen to it. So without further ado, here's Louise. Welcome to the podcast today, Louise. I'm really excited to have you here with me.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so good to be here. Yeah, it's an honor.
Where are you joining me from today?
So I'm in Las Vegas. I just moved here about 5 weeks ago or something with my husband.
Amazing. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's been a big change because we were living on the East Coast of the States. We were near Washington, D.C. in a town called Frederick, Maryland. But then the last couple of months we spent in Cozumel, or 2.5 months we spent in Cozumel, Mexico, which I know is near you. And so, yeah, it was a big move and a big change, but we're all settled here now. And we love it.
Amazing. I love hearing that. That's really awesome. And while I selfishly wish you were still in Mexico, I think it's really cool that you're in Vegas. And just before we dive into all the goodness that we're going to talk about, I'm curious, can you introduce yourself for people who aren't familiar with you and everything that you do?
Yeah. So my name's Louise. I'm from London. I moved to America about 7 years ago to be with my husband. And then during that time, I've studied yoga, studied Ayurveda, had my own healing personal journey and transformation. And now I'm really focused on sharing trauma-informed yoga and Ayurveda with everyone, but particularly with those who need it the most. And then last year during quarantine, I created my own company, Be Moved Yoga. And I created an online course for healing through trauma using yoga and Ayurveda.
Amazing. I love all of that. I'm really aligned with a lot of it, and it makes me so excited to dive into everything we're going to talk about. And I'm curious if we can start by talking a little bit about your journey with health and wellness.
Yeah. Wow. It's continuing always, the journey. But I guess it started how I got into yoga really started in London, actually on a visit to DC to visit Jeff, who's my husband. Back then we weren't married. And we took a Bikram yoga class. We did an intro week at this Bikram studio. And we got obsessed with it. I got really obsessed with it. When I was back in London, because I was still living there, got really into it for a year or so. I was volunteering at a studio so I could get free classes. And that really got me into yoga. Just it felt great. afterwards. It felt difficult during. I don't know if you've ever done hot yoga or Bikram.
It's hard.
I'm not a proponent of him or of his personal, like, he's awful. But back then the practice was like what got me into yoga. And then I moved to America. I felt a bit lost, like it was like starting life again. And Jeff and I moved into our van, and we traveled around the States for like 2 years. And then after that, I'm just trying to like piece it together, just the journey. But after that, then I went to Mexico and took my 200-hour teacher training in yoga and Ayurveda. And that was kind of like, because like before that I had been practicing, but not regularly. It helped me, but I was just like more into the physical benefits of yoga. And honestly, looking back on it, I was really like using it as just like exercise, like to just try not to gain weight or anything. But when I took my 200-hour, it really catalyzed, like it was like nothing I'd ever done before. It was in Shivananda yoga, so classical hatha yoga. Every class is 90 minutes. It's really focused on not just the body, but the mind and the soul. And there's like singing of mantras. There's a lot of like bhakti yoga involved. And that experience, it was a completely crazy time. It was a month-long intensive course. And it brought up a lot like movement and everything about the yoga practice. Basically showed me trauma that I was completely unaware of from my childhood. It brought it up to be healed. But at that time, it was just very difficult. Like I didn't know what to do or like what was happening. And then when I moved back we had our van, and we had like moved to Austin, but we didn't have a home. We were just living in our van still, Austin, Texas. I got back there after the training, and I was just kind of like, whoa, I was a bit lost again. Like, what's going on? Why am I feeling all this crazy stuff? Like I was crying all the time, having breakdowns basically. And then my mom visited, and she suggested I see a therapist. So she found for me this amazing holistic therapist. And that kind of started my healing of trauma stuff from childhood. And since then, I've just been obsessed with sharing like how powerful this is with others, and in a way that's not as intense and like difficult as I experienced, but in a way that's more gentle and like more accessible. Like just healing with yoga, moving the energy.
Amazing. Yeah, I love all of that. Thank you so much for sharing that journey. And it sounds like it was pretty powerful and probably hard at times and definitely profound. And I think it's interesting to kind of have the conversation around like using these modalities to heal from trauma, because I think that what I'm learning is like we all have some form of trauma in our lives, some form of childhood trauma. And obviously there's a scale, some people have really, really good childhoods. Some people have very challenging childhoods, but there's things that don't even seem like they would maybe impact a child that can really like imprint on them. I'd love to hear, if you're open for it, just like a little bit more about kind of this healing journey, like going through this journey of using yoga, Ayurveda to heal your own trauma.
Yeah. So, I don't think I would have been able to heal it without the yoga practice, like actually unearthing the feelings, like the trauma that was kind of stored in my body. Because that's kind of what I learned since studying it more after that happened, after the big, like, oh my God, what is this? Like the traumas and also it doesn't even have to be like trauma, but stress and anxiety and, just our body reacts the same way to those things. And those all get stored in the body. I'm sure maybe you've heard that too. So like the actual physical practice, the movement moved that energy, and that's what made me aware of it even in the first place. And then there was the therapy, like the kind of more traditional therapy that I did that was really helpful. But then using yoga as a way to heal, I would just do my physical practice and kind of like allow whatever came up, which was often like me crying on my mat, like for a good couple of years, doing a lot more gentle yoga than I had ever been doing before, a lot more yin and restorative, and just kind of allowing myself to release what needed to release from my, like allowing, basically, I like to think of it like the emotions releasing from the physical body. And then like kind of that happened. Like I did all the super gentle yoga, cried so much during that time period of like a few years. And then kind of was feeling okay enough to start doing more, like a bit more physical yoga again, like feeling more strong in my emotions. Then I wanted to kind of like reflect that with my practice a bit more. So I started getting into a bit more flow, back into more of the flow yoga kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It definitely does. And it was just kind of reminding me of, I've definitely used like yoga as well as, some of the slower forms, like you're talking about, like the yin and the restorative and yoga nidra to, heal from my own personal traumas and my own, personal things that I've had go on in my life. And it's kind of amazing how these practices work. And I actually started really similarly to you with yoga. I think I'd gone to like a gentle flow class when I was like 18 or 19 with my mom and just like thought it was so boring. And I didn't really get into yoga until I was going to Bikram yoga as well, because it was more vigorous. It was hot. It challenged me more. And now it's funny because my practice doesn't look like that at all, but it really took like that similar evolution of it not just being about the exercise component and the physical component to realize that like, oh, I'm getting this like internal time with myself on my mat. And if I sit down and breathe and meditate, I can tune into these things that I'm not conscious of like day to day when I'm busy at work.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's so true for lots of people, or like at least a few people I've spoken to have a similar story. Like they got into it because of the physical movement. And, like it releases endorphins, it makes you feel good. But then you're like, oh, there's way more to this than just like running or something. Although I do think you can like meditate and feel deeply connected to yourself through running and stuff too, but it's different. Yoga, it's really like, yeah, it's like soul level, like connection to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And so I'm actually in an Ayurveda training right now. It's like a year-long program to become an Ayurvedic wellness coach. Yeah, I'm loving it. It's really cool. I'm just started at the beginning of 2021. So I'm just a couple months into it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your learnings with Ayurveda and kind of what you bring into your day-to-day life and that type of thing.
Yeah, so I love it so much. So my yoga teacher, my 200-hour teacher training was yoga with Ayurveda combined. And they really taught that like you can't separate the two. Maybe you've heard it's called like the sister science of yoga, but yeah, they were really like, you can't really learn one without the other. So that was my intro to it. I'd heard of it before, but nothing really that I understood. And yeah, the way I incorporate it, so through like daily routine, that was the thing that like learning about creating yourself a daily routine, which is one of the like key things of Ayurveda, like to find healing. That like once I learned that and like tried it out myself, found it really difficult, tried different things, like honed it into where I have something I can stick to now. That's like been life changing. And also it changed my like the way my relationship with food and with my own body. Like I really think learning about Ayurveda and like how the different doshas like the foods for each dosha, or the foods that help you cool yourself when you're hot, or things like that, and not just eating what is like deemed as healthy, or like, anything like that, but eating what's actually going to make you feel good in the moment. That's changed everything for me. And I think it's really helped me heal, my relationship with my body and with eating, because I had some pretty unhealthy, like disordered eating habits, and definitely an unhealthy, like not nice relationship with my own body. Lots of self-criticism, which I'm sure is like really common, especially for women. But yeah, it's helped me with that like 1,000 million times. It's changed everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to so much of that too. And I think that, unfortunately, I think you are right. Like there's a lot of people who spend their time looking in the mirror, wanting to change things about the way that they look. And I know that's definitely been a part of my story too. And I think that shifting my mentality from like food as like almost like reward or punishment to just nourishment, I think was something that was really helpful for me. And that's the whole way that Ayurveda talks about food, as this form of nourishing your body, mind, spirit, and taking care of your body. And I think that's like the really cool thing about like Ayurvedic medicine.
Definitely. Yeah. And just like connecting to the food that you're eating, and making sure it's, like fresh and vibrant. And then you'll feel those things too. Like you'll feel good if you eat like good, fresh food. It's not overcomplicated. Like Ayurveda can seem super complicated, but the way I like to think about it, at least, is like, just really listening to your body, to what you need, and having that little bit of background knowledge to know, oh, this will make me feel this way, I'll do that today, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've definitely felt yeah, for sure. Same for me. And I've definitely felt overwhelmed by like the food charts and, the different types of like seasonal food and times of day. And I mean, it's really reflective of the culture we live in, where, I'm from Canada originally. And like, despite the fact that we can grow almost nothing in the winter, like we still have food all year round, which is a really beautiful thing, right? Like we don't have to depend on a really good farm season and a really good harvest to actually survive. Yet it's like, does eating like a mango in January in Canada like really serve my body? I mean, it tastes really good, but it's definitely not seasonal, and it has to come from so far for it to be seasonal to get to Canada.
Right. Yeah. And something, I guess, like during my teacher training too, I totally agree about all the food charts and stuff. If you're unfamiliar with Ayurveda, like when you start reading the texts, at least the ones that are in English, like there's loads of all these charts of like foods for each body type. And that was really overwhelming. And I feel like that style of like being rigid about, like, oh, I'm this dosha, so I can't do this. It wasn't helpful for me when I first came back from that training, and I was like kind of policing my food. Like when my mom visited me in Austin, she like picked up, I remember she picked up a bag of potatoes in like when we were food shopping, and I was like, oh no, like we can't have those. And she was just like, why not? And I was like, oh no, like white potatoes, no, like that's bad. Because of something I'd like internalized about white potatoes being bad for you. And then like I was just looking back on this recently, because it was like, that's pretty nuts. Like they're just like they're potatoes, like they're nourishment. Obviously in excess, it could be bad, quote unquote, but like just eat the bag of, I don't know. Just like policing the food, being too rigid about the food charts and stuff for me it was kind of more feeding into that old patterning of disordered eating, or just at least trying to control everything a bit more. So these days, the way I like incorporate Ayurveda into like my food and my whole life is just finding that connection to myself, to my body through yoga and meditation, and then like really like listening to what I crave or like what I need. It's hot here now, so like I'm not trying to eat like stews and hot soups like where I'm living now. But if I'm like in a cold place like Canada or something, or the UK, that would be totally what I'd be eating in like the winter time.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely relate to that. And I think as I headed on my own health and wellness journey, I think I had sort of this similar experience of coming from a place of having some like, not great habits with disordered eating and that type of thing. And then swung really heavily into, well, now I'm eating healthy, so that's good for me. But you can get to a point where it's like you said, like you're policing your food and you're being super strict. And I think it's kind of about swinging into this place of balance where you're listening to your body and what your body needs and knowing that it's okay to like eat cake for a friend's birthday sometimes, or like eat potatoes. Just, we don't have to eat like an extra large thing of like fried potatoes, like French fries, every single day, like finding that balance point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Finding the balance. And that's always just like ever evolving as well. But yeah, I think as long as you're doing what you feel is good most of the time or all of the time, it's fine to enjoy like whatever. It's going to make you feel worse. I feel like it would make you feel worse to like restrict and just like sit in the corner, not enjoying the birthday cake or whatever.
Yeah. Can you imagine going to a birthday party and just like sitting in the corner because you can't eat the birthday cake?
Yeah, that would be terrible.
Like, yeah, it's just upsetting to think about.
Or what just any wellness is about. Yeah. Not what life is about.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Hey everyone, we're just taking a quick break from the show to talk about energy bits. Energy bits are spirulina tablets made of one ingredient, algae. Nothing added, nothing subtracted, just 100% plant-based algae nutrition. No sugar, no caffeine, no gluten, no soy, no additives, no GMOs, no preservatives, no binders, nothing artificial. Just 100% algae, 100% green, 100% healthy, and 100% pure. Pure and simple, the way food should be. They have high protein, high beta carotene, high iron, high chlorophyll, high antioxidants, and over 40 plus vitamins, including the B vitamins. They have electrolytes, including magnesium, potassium, and are a great source of essential fatty acids. Honestly, I could go on and on and on about how great energy bits are for you, and that's why I've decided to partner with them. If you want to learn more about energy bits or order some yourself, you can head on over to energybits.com to learn more. Use the code WANDERBARN to get 20% off your order. Once again, that's energybits.com and use the code WANDERBARN for 20% off your order. All right, back to the episode. And something that you were mentioning before we started recording, which I'd love to talk about, is you mentioned that you did a year of no alcohol. Can you tell me a little bit about like where that idea came from and what that was like?
Yeah. And it was really cool hearing your detox podcast episode about that, about your month. So I kind of got the idea. I didn't even really, I guess, plan on it being like a year-long thing at all. But it was during the start of like lockdown and COVID happening last year. Because like at home, like over the past like year or so, I hadn't been drinking that much at home anyway. And I'd also we lived with roommates at the time and they were both sober. One of them had been through recovery. So that definitely helped, I think, like not having other people drinking at home or like partying at home. And Jeff, my husband, like he drank like occasionally at home throughout this whole time of me not drinking. But But it was basically just because we were at home, it was lockdown, it was paranoia, what everybody experienced last March and, last year. And I was just like, I don't need to feel worse than than I already do some days, like about everything, about the world. And I had just started like a year long, well, actually it was a 6 month long, but then I extended for another 6 months. But it was like a business mastermind coaching program with my Kundalini teachers, who I absolutely love, as like a group coaching program, but really focused on Kundalini yoga as well. And we were practicing every morning, like we were encouraged to wake up before 6 a.m. and practice. So I was kind of just like combining that with, not wanting to like wake up hungover, miss the practice, or just like feel shit because it's COVID and we're scared. So that was kind of why I decided to do it. And then I was just kind of seeing how long I could, and it ended up being a year, basically.
That's amazing. And are you still not drinking alcohol, or are you drinking alcohol again?
So like, I think it was March 6th of this year when that was like what the date I remember it being like a full year. And I think the day after that, I did have some wine with like a friend who came over. But like really small amount. And I actually, like during the whole time of not drinking, and all the, like just everything last year, I kind of think like how I like to think of it is, alcohol can't give me like anything more than I like can give myself. So I kind of lost inhibitions around like just really being myself, without needing the alcohol to like get me there. Because previously, like I would just binge drink, and that was just the only way I knew how to drink, kind of thing, when I was younger, as a way to like relax and be myself, like blah blah blah. But then, like with the year of not having it, I kind of just like didn't care, like last year made me kind of not care what other people think of me as much. And I'm kind of more comfortable being myself sober. And while we were in Cozumel, like those 2 months of last, like the end of last year, it was like we were staying in a dive house, and there was parties all the time, and I would just hang out and dance and not drink, but like have loads of fun anyway. So I think that really helped, just like me realize that I don't need alcohol to do that. And it, like obviously it tastes good, it makes you feel good, but I didn't like the feeling when I had it after the year of not having it. I actually didn't like the feeling of starting to feel out of control and out of like, how it makes you feel, just like, whoa, I'm getting drunk. So yeah, I haven't had it since then actually, but that kind of wasn't that as intentional. But it's shown me a lot about myself and about, my own level of confidence, which I think you mentioned too about your time with not drinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about. And actually, I can't remember if I mentioned it in this podcast episode, but my husband didn't drink for a year, and it kind of started out as like, wow, I'm just not going to drink for like a month. And then he was like, oh, cool, I did a month, like I'll do 6 months. And then it was like 6 months passed, and he's like, okay, I'll go for a year. And then, I remember it was like, he had a little bit of wine, maybe, I don't know, 13 months after he hadn't drank. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I don't want to be responsible for this, because we're like out for dinner. And he's like, no, I'm sure. Like, I feel pretty complete with this. And it was a very much a similar experience for him in terms of like learning about himself and learning to socialize without alcohol. And even in just like the short period that I did it as well, I had sort of a similar experience. And it's been something I've been really conscious about since then, because I feel sort of the same way. Like, I don't like waking up hungover. I like the taste of like having like a drink of alcohol, but I feel like one thing that not having alcohol showed me is that like, okay, I don't need this to have fun. So if I want to have it because like wine tastes good or this cocktail is good, that's cool. But it shouldn't be about like, oh, I need to like drink a bunch to have a good time tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like that's yeah, completely it. Like that was the only way I had ever done it before. So it was just really, yeah, just really amazing to like realize like, oh, I don't need this to have a good, like, I'm okay to have a good time, just being my true self kind of thing. Yeah, which is a cool discovery to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we live in this world where it's so socially normal to drink alcohol that it's almost like you're socially abnormal if you abstain from drinking, which is like such a strange sort of thing in general. But yeah, we really do like our personality going out is kind of like dependent on, you know, two, three, four drinks. Like we become this person that's fun and easygoing and we don't have to worry about things and whatnot. And I mean, that is a good time. But I think for me, I've definitely realized like, okay, can I be that person or that version of myself without needing to have the alcohol piece?
Yeah, definitely.
I love that.
And yeah, and like it showed me like I had a bunch of like, you know, over the summer with friends in London, like Zoom calls where everyone else was drinking. We were like, we'd like have like Zoom dance parties and just like improv and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, like they're my closest friends and it was just so easy to like be with them, even though it was virtual and weird. But yeah, just like, oh, I can just do this and be myself and don't need the alcohol. But then I wouldn't, yeah. I'm just kind of being more fluid with it these days. Like, oh, if I want it and it feels right, that's, you know, I'm not going to restrict myself. But yeah, it was just a really like, I mean, even like doing a 30 days, even like doing a week, you know, like that's, you know, if you're drinking every day, that's like a massive achievement. And it's just a good like reset and it'll show you a lot if anyone's considering doing it themselves.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think any amount of time of doing something like that can be really beneficial for you. And yeah, I mean, just listening to your story, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could go back in time to like March 2020 and make the same decision because, you know, it was so stressful. And I feel like wine, it was like this pandemic is brought to you by wine and Netflix in my life.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, like when I told people, yeah, that I'm like, oh, I'm not drinking right now. They were like, you're doing it wrong, like the opposite of the whole rest of the world, basically, with the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing though. I have a friend in Mexico who Mexico didn't shut down for that long, but during that time, he was like, I'm going to take this opportunity to like make some changes in my life. And he ended up like losing 40 pounds over the last year. I'm like, you and you alone, like, congrats.
Yeah. Everyone else was like finding all the recipes, cooking everything they could.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm curious, you've shared so much good stuff here, Louise, and I'm curious if people are listening and they're kind of wondering, you know, how they could get started on their own health and wellness journey or maybe use yoga and Ayurveda to start processing their own trauma or just start their own healing journeys. Like what would be your recommendations for somebody to get started?
Wow. I mean, there's so many things you could start with. I guess it depends like what you I guess it depends on the person because like I said and like it was similar for you like the physical practice of yoga was like what started us off on our journeys and I think if you're like an active person or like you know like you have a lot of stress that you feel like is in your body and you need to release, I would say like start with just some like beginner yoga like YouTube videos would be great, or just doing it by yourself, like just playing around, or taking classes, you know, like finding someone to give you a bit of structure and direction. If if that seems overwhelming to like get on a mat and start moving, I would say start with like meditation, just some simple meditation, some long, deep breathing. Like try 1 minute in the morning is what I've told people I've taught before who practice yoga but had never gotten into meditation by itself. Just trying to like close your eyes first thing, sit up. You can sit up in bed even. Close your eyes and just like watch your breath or count your breath. Just kind of feel it. And set a timer for 1 minute and just see how that goes, and then build it up from there. That's kind of my two like ins, or you could definitely do both, movement and the practicing meditation. But yeah, I would say like if you can definitely do it by yourself. I'm like super a big believer that everyone is their own best teacher and you know yourself best. But especially when you're getting started, it's nice to have some direction or like some support, even if it's just like a YouTube video or something. That's how I started with meditation, really, was like my friend sent me a YouTube video and I was like doing that every single day. And then I went from there.
Amazing. I love that. And I love how accessible you made that for people who maybe feel like we have to have this like 90-minute practice or something like that. It doesn't have to be that. It just can be something really small and then you can build up from there. And I love like doing that type of stuff in the morning, like starting my morning with a little bit of movement, a little bit of meditation. That's very in line with kind of the Ayurvedic practices of morning routine and stuff like that. And, you know, you can just add on to it as you feel more confident.
Definitely. Yeah. And like, I used to think like, oh, I need to do my 90-minute practice every day or I'm a bad person or like I'm not doing it properly or something. But then it's like, no, like, you know, we're in this busy world. It doesn't, you know, it won't always work, but just do something. Just do something that makes you feel good. It's going to change your whole life. I feel like if you do it, you know, regularly, it'll change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so you have lots of cool stuff going on with your business. Can you share a little bit about where people can find you, what they could expect, what they could join for, all that good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually coming up soon, although I think it will have ended by the time this actually airs. But it will be a replays. But I'm running a free 5-day challenge. It's called the Energy Reboot for spring and just for like the way clearing for, you know, like life going back to, or not back to normal, but just like, you know, COVID kind of being less of an issue, hopefully in the coming months. But yeah, it's an energy reboot challenge. So I'll be doing 5 days of live sessions with replays. We'll be doing yoga practice, so movement practice. We'll be touching on some Ayurvedic foods that are high vibe and that will boost your energy, and practices that will boost your energy, simple breath work, and getting into like how to create a good bedtime routine as well, because you can do all the practices you want, but if you haven't had a good sleep, you're not going to have energy. So I thought that was really important to add in. And then also, as well as the 5-day challenge, soon I'll be relaunching. I've revamped and reorganized the 8-week online course that I kind of created last year. It's called Heal Holistically. So it's a holistic approach to healing yourself with trauma-informed yoga and Ayurvedic self-care. And it's really all about self-love, committing to yourself for those 8 weeks and doing trauma-informed, pretty gentle yoga practices to shift things around, lots of journaling practices, lots of recipes. You get a free recipe ebook as a bonus when you join. So yeah, Heal Holistically will be opening up at the end of April as well. And then
Amazing.
where you can find me is thank you. Yeah. And where you can find me is bemovedyoga.com. I'm actually redoing the website right now too, so it's kind of a mess right now, but once this airs, I'm sure it'll be up and running. bemovedyoga.com, and then I'm on Facebook and Instagram too, bemovedyoga, all one word. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with you all.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today, Louise, and just sharing everything. It's been really awesome chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure. I love just talking about all this good stuff.
Yeah, me too. It's my jam.